report has revealed that the response from police forces during last summer's Southport riots was entirely appropriate despite claims at the time of two-tier policing. Those are the claims in this report.
Well, the report from the Home Affairs Committee brands any claims of two-tier policing as disgraceful, but does find that police forces were unprepared for the level of violence that broke out on the streets. OK,
well, joining us now is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, take us through some of the findings of this report, then.
Well, on that issue of preparedness, yes, the Home Affairs Committee says that police forces across the country were just not prepared for the level of violence, the possibility of violence. Some of the mutual aid response that should be in place was a bit disjointed and slow. And in terms of the messaging that, of course, went out in the aftermath of the Southport attacks, because many of the people took to the streets, or at least anger, seemed to be fueled by what they were seeing in the likes of X and other social media accounts, the void being filled by the lack of information from official sources. So this report saying that there needs to be a review of the way in which they counter disinformation that's often out there in the public realm. But of course, we now know, actually, with the fullness of time, that not all of the anger that people were feeling over disinformation was false. The Prime Minister himself admitted that there were elements of this case, such as terrorist literature found in this individual's house, such as the fact that he was making a biological weapon, namely the toxin ricin. He knew about that, but didn't put that out into the public realm because he felt that it could be prejudicial to any upcoming trial. So, as well as the messaging, perhaps they need to be looking at a bit more honesty in the initial information that they give out as well.
Well, they've thrown cold water on the claims that there was two-tier policing, haven't they? Do you think that people are legitimate in their criticism that the police acted in a two-tier way?
Well, I know that at the time there was a lot of concern 11 days before when we saw an incident. There was a safeguarding incident in Hare Hills in Leeds, which then descended into really serious disorder and saw the police effectively involved in a tactical withdrawal. And there was real concern there that because of the diverse nature of that community, that it was done so as not to inflame community tensions. Whether there's any truth in that or not, I don't know. People have been prosecuted after Hare Hills in the months since those riots. But at the time, that was certainly one of the factors that was feeding the anger of those involved in some of the subsequent disorder post-Southport. We also saw incidents, actually, multiple incidents of, after a number of days of the protests that led to disorder and then sometimes descended into serious riots, of what we call counter-protests, other groups coming out onto the street. And these groups, certainly in the way they were portrayed, the way they were spoken about, even by official sources within policing, was these were concerned people in communities coming out, when actually a lot of this was being orchestrated by activist groups who come out specifically when they feel that there is some kind of far-right-led protest, and then you get the kind of far-left, the anti-fascist groups that sort of come out. But they were always portrayed as concerned people within communities protecting their own communities. So I think that also embedded in the mindset of those that were out protesting that perhaps there was a two-tier approach from those in officialdom.
I used to have to use the razor that my ex-girlfriend used to shave her legs. It scratched me and it made me feel weird. But fear not, because Manscaped is back with a game changer. This isn't just any old shaver. We're talking about the Chairman Pro Pro electric foil shaver with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. One for that baby smooth look and another when you want to keep it a bit rugged. Get this, it's waterproof. You can use it in the shower, by the pool, or even while scuba diving if that's your thing. This beauty runs for 75 minutes on a single charge. That's enough time to shave your face, your mate's face, and still have juice left over for touch-ups. You'll also get their Power Shave Gel for a proper wet shave experience, and a face shave soother to keep your mug looking fresh and irritation-free. It's like having a barber in your bathroom, minus the awkward small talk. Click the link in the description and use the code GBN for a whopping 20% off and free shipping with the code GBN at manscaped.com. Join the 11 million blokes worldwide who trust Manscaped. Your face will thank you, and so will your wallet.
Really interesting stuff. Do stay with us there, Mark White. We'll be coming back to you in just a second. But for now, we're joined by former police officer Kevin Jewell. Kevin, there's been a huge amount of criticism about the way in which the police responded, particularly the contrast between the Southport riots and the Hare Hills disorder. Why do you think it is that the Home Affairs Committee seemingly didn't find a difference?
Good morning, firstly. I think there's a number of different aspects to this, which Mark has covered in his piece just there around, if we're looking at the policing per se, and if we start at the very top, then one of the primary objectives of the police is to uphold the peace of the public. So when you get to rioting, it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter who is causing the problems. Now then you come on to capability around that, and there's just covered in the report around the tactical withdrawal. Which also links to the Home Affairs Committee report around preparedness to deal with the riots. There's so many issues and fundamental parts involved in this. It's kind of not easy to answer with just one question, because on top of that, you've then also got the concerns, I think, which have been raised and again highlighted just now around what happened afterwards and, the prosecutions that took place. But I think if we start with, first and foremost, the police have to uphold the peace, and they did that under extreme circumstances. And then obviously we come into the fact of, were they fully equipped to do that? Did they have the resources, the mutual aid, et cetera, et cetera? But over and above everything else, I think that the police dealt with the disorder as best they could. And that wasn't two-tier policing. They had to protect life and property.
Yeah, I mean, it's just casting our minds back to what happened in Hare Hills. I mean, we all saw footage of the police running away. We saw footage of a bus being set alight. We saw footage of violence, police cars. Here's the police officers running away there. It looks very different to how the summer riots, the far-right riots, as they're called, were policed.
Yeah, I think equally, though, on the Southport riots, we saw police officers cowering by walls and trying to avoid missiles. So it's certainly not ideal what happened with regards to calling it a tactical withdrawal. But the command at the time has got to make that almost split-second decision as what is safe, what's at risk. If we're talking about people are uniting against the police and throwing things, and it's the police that are in danger, then they would retreat. However, if it was a case that they were, saying like to buildings where there was a danger to life, they would have to respond, and there wouldn't have been the withdrawal.
OK, well, Kevin Jewell, former police officer, thank you indeed for talking us through that. Really interesting stuff there. It does seem, I think, that there, on the face of it, does look like a difference. But then, of course, you've got to think about, do they have the right equipment? Do they have the right riot gear?
No, but you had groups of Asian lads sort of, running around areas. I mean, there was the incident at the Clumsy Swan pub in Yardley. And it led to... it was because of all these false rumours that had gone around that there were all these going to be these far-right rallies, and they were going to be outside here. So lots of groups of Asian lads came with pro-Palestine flags. They were racing their cars around, etc., etc. And then there was a press conference after all this, and the superintendent said he'd met with community leaders prior to the event to understand the style of policing that we needed to deliver. So who are these self-appointed community leaders that he was talking to at the time? And why should the police be dictated to if if they were indeed dictated to, by what their thoughts about whether they needed to police it or not.
Does seem...
I mean, it's totally bizarre. I mean, this was all being live streamed because you can't escape reality now. You know, people have TikTok, people have live streams on their Twitter, they have live streams on their Facebook, so everyone can see things and make their own judgments.
It does seem absolutely bonkers that you'd sort of ask, how do you want to be policed? It's a bit like asking all of these local councils, would you like to be investigated over grooming gangs, or would you choose to put that money in a different way?